Welcome to the Cyber Cookie from CommSec. Our business is to safeguard yours, with services ranging from 24/7 managed detection, vulnerability scanning, penetration testing, to CISO as a service and technology from the world's leading providers. In today's episode, we are joined by our founder David McNamara for a special Q&A session. We'll be talking about the latest cybersecurity regulations, building resilience, emerging AI threats, and whether cybersecurity controls are becoming a burden for Irish businesses. So without further ado, let's dive in.
Well, if you go back and look at why there is regulation, it's because of the increased number of attacks across the EU in general, particularly from nation states, and also malicious actors working independently. So that's why it was brought in. It was to protect national infrastructure from a financial perspective, but also from the ability to do business and not interfere with day-to-day operations of, say, water, electricity, or waste, or food sources, logistics, supply chains, all of that. So that's why it was put in place in the first place. It is really important that companies then, bolster their security defenses in order to comply with these regulations. Not just from a compliance perspective, it actually is good practice that they start taking cybersecurity seriously. It is the biggest threat to their business at the moment.
So our next question, is compliance with the various regulations burdensome? How are Irish companies managing it?
Yeah, compliance can be burdensome if you're not prepared for it. Okay, but in some ways, having proper cybersecurity defenses in place in the first place doesn't make it all that burdensome. And if you're going to take it seriously, then it's just a matter of doing business. So, how are Irish companies managing it? Well, obviously, the larger entities with more funds and everything else and more resources can bolster their cybersecurity defenses and recognize that it is a big risk to their business. But for smaller companies who think it's never going to impact them and why would somebody come after them, it's because they don't have the proper cybersecurity defenses in place. So they then become the weakest link in the supply chain. So if they're supplying into a third party who's also supplying into an important or an essential entity under NIS2, they thereby have to comply with these regulations as well, because they'll be forced to with third-party questionnaires. So adopting a framework like ISO 27001, helps companies achieve compliance with these regulations in the first place. But it also, you don't necessarily have to go for the certification. It's obviously easier if you do. However, it is, if you start to align and adopt some of the controls and the governance around those frameworks, then that becomes your cybersecurity posture defense and also compliance with these regulations. So supports are important for organizations of the smaller end, for SMEs in particular. So there is funding out there from Enterprise Ireland to do a cyber assessment. And there has been funding from the NCSE, which is just closed, to implement those recommendations of the cyber assessment that EI is funded. So, and that's up to €60,000. So I think what I'm hearing is that it's in the National Development Plan or a programme for government that cybersecurity is a big part of it, and there will be more supports coming for SMEs and other businesses to increase their level of security.
So what are the sanctions like for non-compliance, and how can companies avoid this?
The sanctions are actually quite stiff, and it goes further than GDPR ever did. While it might not be as high as GDPR, it's in addition to GDPR. So if you have a breach because you didn't have put in place your proper cybersecurity defenses, and that breach leads to data leakage or data exfiltration by the attacker and gets published and is out there, you're then liable for two fines: one from a GDPR with the Data Protection Commissioner, and two with NIS2 and the NCSE. So the NCSC, or sorry, the NIS2 fines range from, if you're deemed an essential entity, up to 10 million euros. Or 2% of your global revenue. And if you're an important entity, it's 1.4% of your global revenue, or 7 million euros. So that's in addition to, say, up to 20 million from the Data Protection Commissioner. So it really is, from a financial penalty perspective, it's really severe. But in addition to those penalties with NIS2, there's also then sanctions for senior management, that if they have not taken it seriously and put in place the controls, then they can be named and shamed, so can their company, and they can also be stopped doing the managerial functions. So this is really going much further than GDPR ever did.
Yeah. And if a company is showing like good faith in putting these controls together, might not get the whole way, will they still punish them, or will they say, look, you've done a fair bit of this, like?
No, if you're on the road to compliance, right, and you've started to adopt some of the processes and the controls and putting in defences, yeah, that will be taken into consideration. But if you haven't done anything, then buried your head in the sand and thinking, yeah, you are a sitting duck, yeah. And look, I think like GDPR and like the Data Protection Commissioner, they go after the big guys first. But that's not to say they will not pick on an SME, and a larger SME, for example, with, say just under 250 employees, where they will go after them just to teach the others a lesson that there's nobody safe from these regulations.
David, we're just going to move on now to AI, the topic of AI. So how are criminals using AI in cyber attacks?
Well, I suppose to address the first one, if you think back to when you used to get the emails of the Nigerian guy who had a couple of $1 million to give you, which was badly worded in English and lots of different mistakes in it and easily spotted, to now where AI is being used to generate phishing and smishing campaigns, for example, in order to do targeted attacks into organizations, and also then, with the ability of generative AI to develop code based on so with using that to code, to bypass defenses, doing brute force attacks, password breakers, all of these things are being used, and it makes it much easier for attackers to get in then, and they can do it like as a kind of blanket sweep across different IP addresses and domains and everything else, and they're just hoping they just need one break in order to get in, and then once they're in, they can start targeting it even more using AI. So it is a much more sophisticated level of attack that's now coming in to organizations and how they defend against it. Obviously, monitoring is going to be really important of the environment to look for anomalies. Correlation of different types of events in a client's infrastructure is really important, and that's what CommSec does in terms of our 24/7 security operations center, is monitoring our customers' environments for these type of attacks. But we also use AI to defend against these type of attacks. So it's a two-edged sword.
Yeah.
Okay, so with that in mind, how can organizations defend in the heightened threat environment?
Okay, so to address that one, well, in the past, organizations put in antivirus software and they thought that was it. That's all they needed to do, because that would spot, one of these malicious software or attacks coming in or downloads. But now it's evolved into ransomware. It's a huge business, for example, where the attack surface can come in from anywhere. It's users clicking on links, giving away credentials, those credentials then being exploited to traverse a company's network, gain domain control. So it's become much more sophisticated in terms of cybersecurity and resilience that you would need to put in place. So now you need several layers of defense when you're looking at cybersecurity, because it's multifaceted. It's where it's going to come in. It's so pervasive that it's really challenging for a lot of organizations, because they have different systems. They also have, their supply chains can be impacted in terms of cybersecurity, that it can come in from a third party and they're taking out, look at M&S, look at any of the more recent attacks in recent years have been through third party supply chains. So that's why it's a big part of NIS 2 as well, is actually supply chains, and looking at your supply chain and understanding, do they have proper security controls in place for your data?
And you can also assess your supply chains now with vendor questionnaires and suitability profiles.
Yeah, which is also based on ISO 27001, is looking at your supply chain. So having those questionnaires, which you will get, and a lot of companies are already answering, quite a number of them. And in some ways, they're not all coming out in the same way. So it's being able to answer those questions and having something in place like ISO 27K yourself in order to address any of the questions that come back, because you will have already been prepared.
You like this one, David. What are the common weaknesses do you see in organizations?
Well, it's complacency, really.
Yeah.
Complacency is thinking, one, why would we be attacked? Two, I've got antivirus in place, I'm covered. Three is, we are really secure already, and we don't test our defenses to see if we are actually secure. So by having tests done, like penetration testing, like red teaming or purple teaming exercises done, that gives you a good guide to say, well, are we actually secure enough? By testing yourself to see, well, how would an outside third party get into us?
Yeah, I think you touched on this in 3, but we'll go again. How do you help clients integrate cyber resilience into broader business continuity and crisis management planning, rather than treating it as a siloed IT issue?
Well, obviously, it's not an IT issue. IT has become an enabler for a business. It's not just a cost center anymore. The whole business tends to rely on information technology. So having the proper controls and resilience in place, and business continuity measures, should your systems come down, be it through an attack or just an outage for whatever reason, that having those measures in place actually increases your ability to protect your business, but also your customers' information, your business partners' information, your third-party suppliers' information that come into you. And by having proper resilience and integrated that through your business continuity and your crisis management, like have an incident response plan done, do it on a role-based scenario, or even scenario-based planning. So for example, what if we got hit with a ransomware attack and we couldn't gain access to our systems? What would we do? Who would we call? What messages would we give the media? So this is all really important, to actually, if you have a plan, well, then it's much easier to deal with these issues. If you don't know what you're doing, or don't know where you're going, any road will take you there. So by having a proper plan in place, at least you're addressing some of the highest risks that you may have, and they're typically cybersecurity risks. So a risk-based approach to that integration for your cyber resilience into your business continuity planning and your crisis management is extremely important. Plan, plan, plan.
That's a great answer, David. That's a really interesting question. I might use that again. What role does company culture, from leadership buy-in to staff training, play in ensuring that resilience plan actually works when tested by a real incident?
But we see this all the time, particularly when ISO 27001 is trying to be implemented. The biggest challenge, unless it's a top-down approach and it's actually taken seriously by senior management, it typically fails. And that's where you're leaving yourself wide open. So training and educating your employees is extremely important, because they're your kind of first line of defense when it comes to educating them on what to spot in terms of, you know, a suspicious email or suspicious domain or a request that comes in, into actually educating them to defend against those and to double check. And that's not to admonish somebody or punish somebody for clicking on a link. You know, if they're not trained and not educated on it, then it's not their fault. And it shouldn't be a blame game either. You know, people make mistakes. We're all human. So you've got to encourage that by fostering an approach that cybersecurity first. This is your business. This has taken so many businesses out because they haven't put in proper defenses, and they also haven't educated their staff in terms of cybersecurity threats and measures and malicious actors that are out there. So, but you can't just do it once and say, I've trained them, that's it. It has to be a continuous process. It needs to be front and center of their minds that cybersecurity is one of the biggest risks to your business.
Yeah, and I suppose like it's no longer optional that leadership drives this, because they're being held personally accountable under the new legislation.
Exactly. So it is now in there. They can't, you know, make somebody else responsible and, you know, have a bit of, if you like, what's the word? When you delegate down your responsibilities, you can't delegate this responsibility. Yeah. It's yours and yours alone as a senior manager or a board member, or both.
So that wraps up the episode of the Cyber Cookie. Thank you for listening, and a big thanks to founder David McNamara for sharing his insights. If you'd like to learn more about CommSec and how we can help protect your business, visit us at commsec.ie. That's COMMSEC.ie. Stay safe, stay secure, and join us next time for more conversations on what matters in cybersecurity.